This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. I hope everyone had a wonderful evening. Good morning. Good morning. So this is going to be my last bus day with you. So, yeah, I know.
I'm Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I want to speak to you about one of my favorite all-time personalities, but first I want to take the opportunity. We have Moshe with us on the bus. We want to give a big round of applause for Moshe Portnoy for all of his hard work and effort, and for ENS Tours, Eli Slamowitz, and we look forward to many good times together with you, Be'ezus Hashem, in the future. So it's a great zchus to have the opportunity to tell you about one of the all-time great leaders and princes of Klal Yisrael, someone that I feel a very deep personal connection with, Rabbi Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, who lovingly is known to Klal Yisrael as the Abarbanel, or in scholarly circles they call him Abarbanel. Okay, be it as it may, Abarbanel is most well known for his magnum opus, for his commentary on Tanakh, which is one of the most creative, ingenious commentaries that we have on Tanakh. In fact, the Perush of the Malbim is very much based on the Perush of the Abarbanel. What's not so well known is the comments of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov once commented that people think that the Abarbanel was just a mefaresh on Tanakh. Says Rabbi Yaakov, in reality, the Abarbanel is part of the long halachic mesorah of Klal Yisrael. For instance, if you look in the Ramah, in Hilchos Talmud Torah, in Siman Reish Mem Vav Siv Chaf Aleph, the Ramah quotes the Abarbanel as a psak, as a halacha. The Beis Yosef, on the Rambam, in the Kesef Mishnah, in Hilchos Brachos, Parak Gimel, Halacha Ches, he says that Maran Pasi raised the question on the Rambam in a public forum, in front of the Chachamim, and in front of them, the Nesher Hagadol. Who, Rabbi, is the Nesher Hagadol? The Abarbanel. The Abarbanel is called the Nesher Hagadol, Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel. So, let me tell you a little bit about the Abarbanel, one of the most fascinating historical accounts. The Abarbanel begins his career in Portugal. He was born in the capital, in Lisbon, in the year Kuf Tzadi Ches. So if you remember the formula, Kuf Tzadi Ches is what? Very good. Pinchas says 1438. And because of his manifold talents, he becomes the treasurer of King Alfonso. Abarbanel describes King Alfonso as a righteous ruler, but Alfonso dies in 1481. And he's succeeded by his son Wao, Joao, with a little zarka on the A. Wao. Wao becomes the king. He executes almost all of his father's officers and falsely accuses them of treason. Abarbanel is summoned by Wao. Abarbanel says to the messenger, "What does Wao want?" He says, "Don't worry, Wao wants your advice." Abarbanel is advised, Wao doesn't want the Abarbanel's advice. Wao wants to chop off the Abarbanel's head. So the Abarbanel flees, running, pursuing out of Portugal. Literally, the pursuers were at his back when he crosses safely into Spain. He arrives in Spain penniless and in complete anonymity, which is always good for a rabbi. He arrives in Toledo, and for the first time in his life, he has some respite. And he begins to write his Perush on Tanakh in Toledo. You didn't know why it was called Holy Toledo. Now you know. It's because that's where the Abarbanel began to write his commentary to Tanakh. His literary output was almost supernatural. Listen to these dates, Rabbi Isai. He begins to write his Perush on Sefer Yeshua on the 10th day of Cheshvan, Reish Mem Daled. What year is Reish Mem Daled?
1488.
1484. Excellent. 1484. You just add 1240. And he completes it on the 26th day of Cheshvan, of that very month. Can you imagine? He wrote his entire commentary on Sefer Yehoshua in only 16 days. His commentary on Shoftim, he wrote between Rosh Chodesh Kislev. He completed it on Chanukah. His whole Perush on Shoftim, 25 days. His commentary on Shmuel, only 2.5 months, from Yud Gimel Adar until Rosh Chodesh Shvat, until Rosh Chodesh Teves. But it's not long. The talents of the Abarbanel are discovered, and he's summoned to serve as the finance minister to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, and in this capacity, the Abarbanel assisted the king and queen to become the financial superpower of the world. But his times of peace would not last long. Ferdinand and Isabella had embarked on their ambition of reconquesta. What's reconquesta? The ambition to reconquer the entire Arabian Peninsula. Does anybody know what year the Muslims came in and took over the Iberian Peninsula? What year did the Muslims take over the Iberian Peninsula? I'll give you a hint. On this day, they give out free Slurpees. 711, that's right. In the year 711, the Muslims conquered the Iberian Peninsula. Well, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were the leaders of what is called Reconquesta, where they wanted to reconquer the Iberian Peninsula from Arab control. In the year 1487, Malaga fell to the Christian monarchs, with only one Arab stronghold left to reconquer the entire Arabian Peninsula. And then the ominous year 1492 arrived. On January 2nd, 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella won a great victory. They attacked Granada. They conquered Granada. Granada is one of the greatest military victories in world history. By conquering Granada, Reconquesta was complete. The Christian world now retained control of the entire Iberian Peninsula. And this arrogant king, Ferdinand, returns from victory, and he says, Vayomer Esav Belibai Bama Esratza Lelekai. How can I thank my God? How can I appease my God for reconquering the entire Arabian Peninsula? The only way I could do that is to gather all the miserable Jews who walk in darkness and force them to embrace the true religion. And then, if not, I will banish them from the Iberian Peninsula. Says the Abarbanel, Yotza Dvar Malchus Milefanov Kedose Paras Umadai. And it occurred in what year? The ominous year, 1492. Many Achroinim find Ramazim and Tanakh for the year 1492. The Abarbanel in his commentary to Hosea, Parakeh, Pasuk Zayin, says the remez to 1492 is in the Pasuk. We lay it on Rosh Hashanah. Mizarei Yisrael Akabtzenu. Mizarei Yisrael Akabtzenu. The gematria of Mizarei is 252. What year is 252 in the Jewish calendar? What's the formula? Add 1240. 1492. By the way, so that's the remez to 1492. Mizarei Yisrael. That was the year we were scattered. By the way, there's an amazing sefer. Tzemach David. Tzemach David was written by Rav David Gans. Rav David Gans was the Talmud of the Ramah. By the way, Rav David Gans grew up in Germany. He had such a cheshek to learn from the Ramah that he walked from Krakow he walked from Germany all the way to Krakow to learn Torah from the Ramah. He became one of the most renowned astronomers of the time. He corresponded with Tycho Brahe, Johann Kepler. This is the Tzemach David. He wrote a famous work of Jewish history. He also finds a remez to the year 1492. Rabim b'nei Shoimema. The word Rabim. Rabim is gematria 252. What Jewish year is that? 1492. Says the Abarbanel, the decree went forth that in 3 months, any Jew who would not accept the Christian faith would be banished from the country. And everybody knows, by the way, in what month did this fall out on? In what month did the decree of the king fall out on? Av. And frighteningly, what day of the month did it fall out on? Tisha B'Av, Thursday, August 2nd, 1492. Tisha B'Av was the date selected, either conversion or expulsion. Says Abarbanel, V'hu lo yada mizeh hazman davar. The king had no idea it fell out on Tisha B'Av. He did not plan that it should fall out on Tisha B'Av. He says, Ki'ilu min hashamayim hidrichuhu lehagbalas hazman hazeh. It's as if his hand was directed from heaven to fall out on this lightning rod of a day, the day of the Churban of the 2 Batei Mikdashim. I'm going to ask you a question to think about. and maybe we'll answer it at the end of the talk. If you look at the Kinus of Tisha B'Av, we speak about many Jewish tragedies that occurred throughout history. We talk about Gzeras Tatnu. We talk about the Crusades of 1096. We talk about the burning of Shas in 1242. We talk about many Jewish tragedies. Marav Rabbi side, did you ever think for a moment, why in the world do we not talk about the Spanish expulsion? Where this is a tragedy, not only did it happen in Av, it happened on Tisha B'Av. And we talk about every Jewish tragedy. We even have a kinnah for the Holocaust. Why is there no kinnah for the Spanish Inquisition? You ever think about that question?
We could have left.
We did leave. 300,000. Why is there no kinnah? Okay, you're barking up a good tree, but we're going to come back to that. Says Abarbanel, and the law went out that any Jew living in Sepharad, in Sicily, in Mallorca, Sardinia, either convert or expulsion. Says Abarbanel, I was sitting in the palace. I could not keep my mouth closed, and I risked my life. And I screamed to the king with every fiber of my being, save these people! What do you want for them? Why are you doing this? You want money? Says Abarbanel, I personally will give the king a tremendous donation if he saves the lives of all the Jews. And the Abarbanel was persuading. Says Abarbanel, the king and the queen were about to relent. And what happened? Says Abarbanel, just then, as the king and queen were about to reconsider, in walks the terrible inquisitor of the Inquisition, Torquemada. Thomas Torquemada came running in, waving a cross, ranting and raving, and he was screaming. He was ballistic, and he scared the king. He scared the king and queen, and he asked Abarbanel to leave the room. And at that day, the edict was signed. It was completed Thursday, August 2nd, Tisha B'Av, 1492. Says the Abarbanel, as bad as King Ferdinand was, it wasn't him. It was the Rashanta, v'hasatan oimei liminai l'sitnai. Says Abarbanel, it was his wife. The Abarbanel writes the words, v'hamalka oimedes al yaminai l'sitnai. By the way, Torquemada was the king's inquisitor. In 1483, he became the Grand Inquisitor of the Inquisition. Within a few years of his assumption of that post, 30,000 Yidden had already lost their lives, and the cries of the torture chambers in Spain reverberated throughout the country. If you think life was good before the Inquisition, every street corner you went to, there were Yidden writhing, screaming in pain. They would describe a little bit what it was like. If they caught somebody who was suspected of converting to Christianity, secretly practicing Judaism, they would try to get them to be Maida. They would take rusty nails and they would push them up people's toes and fingers until they were Maida. And very often, even if people were not practicing Judaism, they, in pain, in the agony, they were Maida wrongfully. There were fires on every street corner in Spain. The pyres of the auto da fe hovered like a dark cloud all over the Iberian Peninsula. Says Abarbanel, since the Golos of Yerushalayim, we never had such a tragedy. How many Jews left Spain? By the way, most Yidden left between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. How many Yidden? 300,000 Yidden left Spain. Hundreds of thousands of Jews converted. By the way, the first time in history that Jews converted to Christianity was 101 years earlier, in 1391. In 1391, Nebuch, 200,000 Yidden converted. So says Abarbanel, I left now. I just want to digress for a moment. As the Jews were leaving Spain, the Gedolei Yisrael of the time, the Abarbanel among them, paskined that they should play music. So here it is on Tisha B'Av, and bands are playing music as the Jews are leaving Spain. Why? So the Abarbanel explained, and other Gedolim explained, firstly, the Jews were so depressed, they were so demoralized, that it was pikuach nefashos to play music to raise their spirits. But says the Abarbanel another important yesod. Yes, the Holocaust was a great tragedy. The Crusades was a great tragedy. Tach v'tat was a great tragedy. But the Spanish Inquisition, we do not commemorate. You know why? Because we never cry when we leave the Galus. We only cry when we leave Yerushalayim. As bad as the Spanish Inquisition was, we weren't leaving our home. We were leaving the Galus. Mo'av Rabbi, don't get too comfortable in the United States of America. Reb Chaim Volozhin writes, the Jewish people have to experience 10 exiles before Mashiach comes. Bavel, North Africa, Spain, Italy, Lita, Poland, and so on and so forth. Says Reb Chaim, America is the last Galus. Every single country we were ever in, we were thrown out of. But we have the false complacency, but not America. America's our home. We have beautiful homes in America. We have bungalows in America. We could go to Miami in America. Don't get too comfortable. The verdict of history is that a day comes, and that's our last day in the country. And we're not going to be crying when we leave America, the same way we didn't cry when we left Spain. Well, yeah, now that you mentioned Columbus, let me tell you a little bit about Christopher Columbus. It's well known that in his travels to America, he used the maritime charts of Rabbi Avram Zakuto. Rabbi Avram Zakuto, not to be confused with Rabbi Moshe Zakuto. Rabbi Moshe Zakuto, we were at his kever. Rabbi Avram Zakuto wrote maritime charts. By the way, on one of Columbus's expeditions, he was captured by cannibals in America. And they already put him in the pot. And Christopher Columbus. And Columbus said, if you don't release me, I will pray to my God and blot out the light of the moon. Now, Christopher Columbus was very smart. He had the maritime charts of Rav Ram Zakuto. And Zakuto predicted a lunar eclipse in the upcoming day. Says Christopher Columbus, he started mumbling prayer, and the cannibals look up into the sky, and suddenly, the moon is disappearing! And they start worshiping Christopher Columbus as a god. They bestowed on him great honors, and that is how Christopher Columbus was saved from the cannibals. And if you want to look, you could go to the museum in Lisbon today, where you will see the Sefer HaYuchsin of Rabbi Avram Zakuto with the footnotes of none other than Christopher Columbus. Well, as the Jews are leaving Spain on Thursday, August 2nd, on the very next day, Friday, August 3rd, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella commissioned 3 ships to leave the port city, and they were going to discover America. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. There is historical account that as the Jews were leaving the country of Spain, taken off as prisoners, they waved to the 3 ships of Christopher Columbus as a message from the Ribono Shel Olam that yes, you're going into exile, but I am already paving the way for the next safe haven for Klal Yisrael for many years, hopefully ad bias Goyal Tzedek. Well, says the Abarbanel, where did I go? We left Spain in 1492. I had the opportunity, says the Abarbanel, to have the exclusive rights to remain as the only Jew in Spain as the finance minister of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And as we're going into Galus, we feel the presence of something very great with us. V'yatza malka lifneim v'Hashem b'rosham. We felt the Shechina accompanying us out of the Galus. And where were we going? We had no idea. Some went to Portugal, others to Navarre. We suffered, we were broken, we were hungry. Many of the ships we went on sunk, many were capsized. I myself, says Abarbanel, made my way to Naples. By the way, there was once a great Rebbe who went to Naples. Who's that? The Radzina Rebbe. He went to the Great Aquarium in Naples. That is where he came up with his first version of Tcheles. Unfortunately, the Radzina Rebbe was duped by an Italian fisherman who... who put in some organic material into his concoction to make it turn blue, but that's a discussion for another time. So Azina Rebbe was in Naples. Abarbanel comes to Naples. Abarbanel comes to Naples in the year 1493. Rabbi say, Gerim Hayisem. Gerim is the Gematria 253, that's the year 1493. Here the Abarbanel begins his commentary on Sefer Melachim. Then the Abarbanel comes to Monopoli in southern Italy. He comes to Venice in 1503. In Venice, the Abarbanel finishes many of his Svarim. He writes a commentary to the Moreh Nevuchim called Rosh Amana. He wrote a trilogy on the coming of Mashiach called Yeshua's Mashiachai, Mayane HaYeshua, Mashmiya Yeshua. He wrote a commentary to Pirkei Avos called Nachalas Avos. I want to tell you something remarkable that the Abarbanel writes in the 6th parak of Pirkei Avos. He says for the first time in his life, he saw something very unusual in Italy. What did he see in Italy? Says Abarbanel, Achare boi li Italia, matzasi shenispashet haminag lismach. I don't get it, says Abarbanel. I come to a shul in Italy, and there are these people sitting in the front of the shul facing everybody else. Who are these guys with beards looking at me when I daven? And then I heard they're called rabbis. Rabbis? What's a rabbi? It says in the Chumash there's something called a rabbi. Smicha is if you have smicha from Moshe, from Yeshua. In the times of Yehuda ben Bava, there's no more smicha. Says Abarbanel, you know where rabbis come from? From the Goyim. Im loy shekinu midarkei ha'amim ha'isim daktir. The Goyim have doctors, so we were jealous, so we appoint rabbis. Says Abarbanel, I never saw such a thing in Spain. You have Talmidei Chachamim, you have Magidei Shiurim, but for someone to be a rabbi, that wasn't originally a Jewish concept, says Abarbanel. Okay, anybody remember, what is the name of the Abarbanel's commentary to the Haggadah? Zevach Pesach. Zevach Pesach. Amazingly, there's a kitzer of the Zevach Pesach called Tzli Eish. Who wrote the kitzer of the Abarbanel on Haggadah? That's right, Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh of Modena wrote Sefer Tzli Eish. My favorite character? What can I tell you, Now the Abarbanel was able to see a very important aspect of Hashgacha Pratis from leaving Spain. I believe Rabbi Shapiro may have mentioned this briefly. He said, as long as I was finance minister in Spain, I was busy with dvarim, betalim, with nonsense, with finances. I had no time to learn. I come to Italy with no fame and no money, and all of a sudden I'm able to accomplish. This is the meaning of the Gemara. Chesure mechsura v'hachi katani. When you don't have anything, now there's time to learn. Abarbanel was nifter at the age of 71 in the year Reish Samach Ches, 1508. Does anybody remember? What do we call the year Reish Samach Ches? Chasar. Zayergit. Missing. Why? Because during that year we lost two great Gedolei Yisrael, the Abarbanel, and 5 days earlier we lost Rabbi Yehuda Mintz. Let me conclude, Rabbi. I want to tell you something stunning, something gorgeous from the Abarbanel's commentary to the Torah. It's mamish beautiful. There's a major subject in the Torah that none of the Mefarshim are able to explain. And that is what we call Birchas Yaakov, right? Remember Birchas Yaakov in Parshas Vayechi? Does anybody know, does anyone have any clue? What's Birchas Yaakov? It's a bracha? Really? It's a bracha. So Yaakov Avinu says to Ruvain, Pachas kamayim, you're impetuous. That's a bracha. He tells Shimon and Levi, Orapam, you have a temper. That's a bracha. He tells Zvulun, you're going to live by the seacoast. That's a bracha. He tells Yehuda, you're a lion. Well, what exactly is the bracha there? Maybe you'll say, Yaakov is just speaking his mind. It's very hard to understand and to come up with one thematic approach. What is Birchas Yaakov? None of the Mefarshim have been successful in explaining one theme. What is Yaakov doing? Some brothers get a bracha. Others get a criticism. Others are given real estate advice. Others are given nevuah about their future. What is the Birchas Yaakov? Abarbanel clarifies this episode of Torah like a lightning bolt in darkness. Says Abarbanel, Yaakov Avinu is laying in his deathbed, and he sees a beautiful mishpacha, but he knows it's not long before this mishpacha, they become Shivim Nafesh, and they become 3 million people, and they become a nation, and they're going to need a king. Every Am needs a Melech. And Yaakov Avinu now has to decide who is going to be Melech Yisrael. So he's going through all of his children and explaining, do they have what it takes to be the Melech? Do they have the personality, the character, the future, the real estate? So Yaakov Avinu starts with Ruvain. He says, Ruvain, Pachaz Kamayim, you're impetuous. This is not a criticism. It's not a klala. It's statement of fact. Your personality is impetuous, and you don't have the personality and the ability to think things through very thoroughly. You don't have the character to be the king. Shimon and Levi, you have a temper. Wonderful. So you'll be a Cheder Rebbe. You'll be Kli Kodesh. It's not a problem. If you have energy, you have enthusiasm, you have passion, you'll teach Tinoiko Shabbat Rabban. It's not a criticism. It's a compliment. But you can't be the king. The king can't be a Balkas. Zavulon, you're a great businessman. But listen, between me and you, imagine if you went to visit the king, and the king said, I want to take you to the side. And he takes it to the side. He opens up his jacket. You want to buy a watch? You want to buy an umbrella? That's not exactly the nature that is conducive for Malchus. So Zavulon, you're a great guy. You're terrific. You're going to be a successful businessman. You're going to support Torah. But you can't be the Melech. And one by one, Yaakov Avinu is not complimenting, he's not criticizing, he's not saying prophecy, he's not giving real estate advice. Yaakov Avinu is merely analyzing if each brother has what it takes to be the Melech Yisrael. What about Yosef? Yosef would be the natural choice to be a Melech. No, says Yaakov, Vayimaruhu varoivu. The brothers hated you. Even though you have the persona and the majesty to be the king, you do not command the respect of the brothers. There's only one brother who has the gevura, the power, the midos, the character, the enthusiasm to be the Melech Yisrael. Yehuda, Gur Aryeh Yehuda. Yehuda, you have it what it takes. Says Abarbanel, throughout history, the leaders of Klal Yisrael, for the most part, Ruba de Ruba of Gedolei Yisrael, come from Shevet Yehuda. Says Abarbanel, whether it was the Rosh Sanhedrin, whether it was the Reish Galusa, says Abarbanel, even in our own times, even the leaders of Spanish Jewry are descendants of Shevet Yehuda and David HaMelech. By the way, Rashi came from David. The Rambam came from David. Rabbi Yehuda Anossi came from David. Hillel came from David. Ram Gamliel came from David. V'ru'uyim hadvarim l'misha amram. There is no one who these words apply to more than the Abarbanel himself. Because Abarbanel opens his commentary to the Navi Hosea. Says Abarbanel, do you know who I am? Mizera David. I am a direct descendant of David. Nogid u'metzaveh le'umi. Chida writes about the Abarbanel, he was Choiter Migeza Yishai. He was a branch from the trunk of Yishai. Abarbanel was a true leader of Klal Yisrael. He was a Roya Neman. He could have remained in Spain, remained as a loyal executive and minister to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. But he decided to be with his people, to lead his people out of Golos. He was a Melech in Klal Yisrael. Just want to share with you one prophecy of the Abarbanel, and I said it in Spain. It was on TorahAnytime, and I'm going to tell you what happened. One of the great prophecies of the Abarbanel, in his commentary to the Navi, is that at the end of days, the Marranos, who are forced to abdicate their religion, they will return back to Judaism one day. And I was contacted by a wonderful lady who is a descendant of Marranos, and she was so moved by these words of the Abarbanel that I made a bris recently. She came from Connecticut all the way to the bris. She was shaken by the prophecy of the Abarbanel that at the end of days she traced back her family She became a Ger Tzedek, a Gioras Tzedek, not because of the Shiur, although, but not a Ger Chassid, a Ger Tzedek. And so this is what we see in our times. Courtesy of TorahAnytime.com. She was. But Rabbi said, this is what we see in our times, that there are many, many families in Mexico, in Puerto Rico today, in Spain today. They say that the percentage of Jews in Spain today is very, very high, and they don't even know about it. So we hope, before Mashiach comes, Mizore Yisrael Akabtzeno, we hope not only is that a nevuah about 1492, we hope that's a nevuah about our times, that all the Jews who Nebuch went lost 500 years ago retrace their roots, come back to Klal Yisrael. We're in Mispalel to Kabbalah Shefer Gadol, V'sanes l'kabetz kol Yosenu, V'vias kol tzedek v'mher v'yameinu. Amen.
How about the name of our...
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.